This is Parasha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamet in Highland Park, New Jersey, Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation, Anshe Emet, and joining me, my good friends, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Schechter Day School of Long Island, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanowski, Anshe Chesed, New York City. We are recording this. It's day 19 of the war. It's we're recording this on the Wednesday before Shabbat Lekh Lekha, and of course, as things unfold in Israel, we are so deeply mindful of our friends and family in Israel who are going through what is a very, very difficult, challenging time. And all of us, who are one or two levels of orbit around our Israeli family and friends, we are thinking about them constantly and trying to do whatever we can here to support and to put our voices out there and to be advocates for Israel in every way possible. And on that note, we're wanting to give a big shout out to our friend Mitch Mernick, who's the producer emeritus of Parasha Talk. He's not emeritus. He's
still working.
He's still working, but his son has been called up. Ben Mernick. He's in Shirion. He's in the Tank Corps. And we're thinking of you, Mitch. We're thinking of your family, and we're thinking of Ben. So we're sending lots of chizuk to you and to our entire Ramah Mishpacha and to our congregations, and by extension, everybody. This is
all our friends and family. And I've got some kids in my shul, Hanan Shulman and Ilan Bakrak. Ben Boxer, who's a little bit older now, he's in the reserve. Ilan's also in the reserve, and other folks. Many friends, and such a dark time, and we fear that it's going to get darker. So we just send in all our love. The prayer that we've been saying, I got from the Koran Siddur, but it's been in other versions too. Our brothers and sisters who are in captivity and pain, that God should, that'll break their shackles, save them from their crises. And the line that just gets me every time is Yoshivem el chek mishpachotehem, like to bring them back to the loving embrace of their family. Just to think about those little babies kept captive, and it's just awful.
We have friends of people in our community who are hostages, so it's very, very close to us.
So I will mention one of my former students, Omer Nutra, who is a hostage, and another student, Ira Kohler, who's a Chayal Bodad, a lone soldier, on active duty in the IDF.
Yeah, my shul have Rafael and Ayala Jones, who are active people, and of course Nama's boyfriend Jacob Zucker has been called up, and he's somewhere in an undisclosed location, who knows where, moving from base to base at this point. So we're thinking about, and we're talking about the Parsha. We're talking about, in a way, the study of Torah is a little, provides some nechama for us, a little bit of comfort for us, notwithstanding the fact that, we're thinking about these big events, these big world events, in the context of, what's going on and how they filter in, I suppose, in our reading of the Parsha. So maybe this is a good place to start with Lekh Lekha. Lekh Lekha is a world-changing event. When you put it in the perspective of, here is a call to an individual who we don't know a lot about, and God basically says, Lekh Lekha, go, and the argument is that this changes human history. So we can start with that. We could start with the idea that this is a call that severs his connections to everything that orients him and defines him, his land, his birthplace, his father's household, and going to a land that God will show him. And so maybe the question I want to ask is this is a challenge to him, and we frame the Abraham story as a series of challenges. Can we just ask a question about all of these experiences as challenges? Or what is going on here? Why Abraham? What is he experiencing here? And why would the tradition see this as a series of challenges? You want to take that?
At one level, religion works best in the gap between, reality, prosaic reality, all the stuff that's difficult about the world, and an aspiration to transcend it. Like religion works when it points us, towards something wiser or better or more spiritual or more ethical. And so at some level, if a religious story were simply, and God said, do this, and everyone did it, and it wasn't hard, then it wouldn't have that disjunctive quality that good religion has. Instead, like religion, if it's going to work, is going to say, hey, listen, we're actually asking something of you that is a little dissonant with the regular life. We're asking you to be somewhat countercultural to your society, because your society is always going to be like greedy and cruel, and some people are going to stomp on other people. And we're asking you to go outside of the rubric of your everyday society with all of its failings, and that's going to be hard, and it's not going to be the easy route. And that to me is connected to a religious desire to always have a little disjunction from the way things are and point towards the way things might be. So, the rabbis, of course, in what must be one of the most, 4 or 5 famous passages in rabbinic literature, why Abraham? Well, Abraham broke the idols. His society was a stupid society, and they thought stupid things, and they didn't have much insight about the superficiality of their religion. And Abraham broke those idols and made them think differently, and that made him have to be countercultural, and that made him have to leave a society. But it's when you leave something behind that you can build something new, something like that, perhaps.
Perhaps. Barry, have any thoughts on this?
So I think that what distinguishes Abraham for me is that he not only heard God's voice, but he followed it. I have to imagine that God might have tried reaching more than one person, but only Abraham in our tradition answers the call. And, the narrative arc of both the Torah and the Bible is intriguing, because Lekh Lekha makes Abraham leave Babylonia. The Jews will later go back to Babylonia, but not as the children of Abraham, as it were. And Abraham in our Parsha will find himself in Egypt, which is the other great cultural place in the ancient Near East. And the relationship between the Hebrews and the Israelites in Egypt is a conflicted one, not only in the Parsha, but throughout the Torah, with the enslavement in Egypt and the Exodus, and then later in the historical books, where Egypt is going to be a main power to be dealt with. And what we have in Abraham is someone who knows to leave Babylonia and knows that Egypt is overshooting his mark. And so he has to find himself in Eretz Canaan, the land that the Torah twice mentions in our Parsha is populated with other peoples who are too different to become one of.
I would like to try and understand the challenge that God gives Abraham, and I guess I'm picking up on what Jeremy said, which is, God asks him, to do something, and he obeys it. I'm wondering whether or not he actually obeys it the way that God wants, because Lekh Lekha sounds to me very singular. We may have talked about this in the past, but he's coming out of a context. The context is there is already some movement. We saw that at the end of last week's Parsha. The family of Terach, that's Abraham's family, which consists of Terach. We don't know who Mrs. Terach is. There's his brother Nahor and his brother Haran, and Haran has a son Lot, and Haran dies. Okay, so we have an unusual situation in this family, which is that there are three sons in this family and a patriarch in this family, and it seems that following from the pattern already that exists with Terach who has three sons, Shem, Ham, and Yafet, and each of those sons populates a certain continent. So maybe there's a kind of region that we're looking for. And in fact, Nahor populates the region that is, Lebanon, Syria. And maybe Lot or maybe Haran was supposed to populate what is today Jordan. And Abraham was to populate the land of Canaan. And so what you have, though, is this rupture because a son dies, Haran dies, and Lot is absorbed into the family of Abraham. And when God says, Lekh Lekha, and Lekh Lekha me'artzecha me'moladecha me'beit avicha, go from your land, your birthplace, your father's household, I will make you a great nation. E'escha legoy gadol, va'avarecha, I will bless you, va'gadla shemecha, I will make your name great, ve'heye bracha, and you will be a blessing. And goes on, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you, and through you all of the people of the earth will be blessed. So that's
you got that last.
the
last line vitiates your point a little bit,
which is
if you want to say, as we've discussed this in the past, that Abraham is really supposed to leave behind something,
yes,
and maybe makes a mistake by trying to bring the Haran branch of the family through Lot into his journey. But v'nivrachu b'cha kol mishpachot adama, it would seem to me that all the families of the world should be blessed through you. Like, why would he be punished, or what would be wrong? What would be the misfire in saying, yeah, my nephew, he should be part of this too? Because that's why isn't that under the rubric of all the families of the world be blessed through you?
Right. So I'm thinking that possibly this means you're going to have a new family, and Abraham actually is very loyal to his old family. He's loyal to the wife that is barren, that can't give him children. We know that already from the end of last week's Parsha. And he's loyal to his deceased brother's son. And so what you have here is a challenge. The challenge to Abraham is that you are to become this, but how are you to navigate your responsibilities to your family of origin together with the challenge of the heroic journey. The heroic journey is usually a journey of the individual, not of a family. And here he really imprints a different idea here. I'm taking my family with me.
So it may be that originally Lot was seen to be the proper heir of Abraham, because he does have the family connection, and Sarah is barren, which is mentioned last week. But Lot proves unworthy, and he is tested as well. He is given circumstances that are fraught with difficulty, and I think we could say, certainly with the advantage of hindsight, he doesn't quite measure up. He's not the kind of person that we would choose to be part of our family, although I imagine every family has someone like Lot in it. So that leaves Abraham with Sarah. And one way I think to understand this Parsha in particular is a meditation on what really constitutes a family.
Yeah.
And it's always more complicated than we think, even though I think everyone comes from a complicated family, right? That's part of the wisdom that comes with age, is you realize that all families are complicated. And here we have that working out. That's what brings Abraham to Egypt, and that difficult family dynamic. And later, Abraham will go rescue his nephew Lot, who has been taken captive by the locals. And, domestic Eliezer will be offered as another heir apparent, and Ishmael, before Isaac, in a week or two, will become the true heir of Abraham.
Right. So
the one piece of one thing that I think really works well for your point is the Agadla Shemecha.
Yeah.
I'll make your name great. Lot, by the way, in the Sdom V'Amorah episode, does not come off that badly. He actually, I mean, he comes off. He says one of the worst things in the whole Torah. He offers to give the marauding, to throw his own virgin daughters to the gang rape mob, which is not nice. But he's doing his best to protect the angels also, and he ultimately does warrant God's rescue from Sodom. But what happens, of course, in the end is that he ends up, in an incestual nightmare, having children with his daughters, and their names are Moab and Ammon. And so their names, those are Israel's rival people, and their names are the opposite of Agad La Shemecha. I'll make your name great, but Lot, he goes down and his name is actually mud.
Interesting. Fascinating. While we're on parsing some of these things, I'm always I've been saying this, Va'avarcha mevarecha mekalelcha, or this is the line for anti-Semitism, which is in abundance right now. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. It never fails to be validated in front of me that people who curse Jews, the people who hate Jews, in the end, I think are cursed people. I have one illustration of this that I've been meaning to use in a sermon. I'm going to blow it now and use it here, which is, okay. So from time to time, I enjoy a bike ride, and where I go nearby, between it's outside of Princeton and all the way down to New Brunswick, there's a place that used to be a camp, and I looked this up on the internet through some kind of coincidence. I discovered that in the 30s there was a Nazi camp in New Jersey, and it was located right near Rocky Hill, New Jersey, or south of Rocky Hill, New Jersey. And that place is desolate today. It's just overrun. It's the most disgusting piece of land that you could ever see. It's a swamp full of dead trees and abandoned buildings, and it's disgusting. And every time I drive by that, I say this verse, that because this was a Nazi camp right here, even the land itself still remains cursed because of it. Okay.
The ground is cursed because of you. I mean, I have to say, anti-Semitism. I was born in 1966. I was born in 1966, and of course, I have seen some evidences of it. But basically, in American Jewish life, our biggest problem is actually not hasn't been anti-Semitism. It's been
until now. Let's be honest.
Until now, it has not been. Our biggest problem is actually that people loved us a little too much and wanted to marry us, and that posed a different set of problems. But boy, it is just reared with a vengeance. So the Jews are liars, and they hold too much power, and there's something secret and sneaky and greedy and vindictive about them, and they just hate everybody who's not in the group. Would that our group consciousness was so strong that we hated people who were not. It is just devastating these weeks. And then I must say, with a little bit of small humor, one of my members is a senior partner at Davis Polk, I haven't said this to him, but he's at one of the big law firms. He is one of the senior partners, and Davis Polk rescinded some job offers to people who had signed the anti-Israel stuff. And I thought to myself, well, that's a good way to convince people that we don't have a power. We're not a cabal of power to take economic punishment to the people we don't like. But we're in a difficult spot. We're in a frightening, difficult spot full of a lot of rage and hatred.
Yes, and sorry to say, I don't think it's going to get better very much soon. I think it's going to get worse. I think it's, I'm looking at my watch now, and in about 15 minutes, there's going to be a rally, a silent rally at Rutgers, not far from me, where they're going to read the names of the abducted, Israelis, and I'm scared for those kids, and because they're facing such hostility and anger from the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian students that have no shame in embracing this lethal genocidal ideology, and it's absolutely horrific. And we're living right with it. We're living very close to it. Jeremy, you're living, in New York City, and you see it in a very difficult way, or a different way. Certainly, today I got a note about Columbia University, and I've been watching things in Columbia University, and seeing the things that are going on in the campuses is quite scary. It's horrific, actually, and we're in for a lot of challenges. And I go back to this verse, which is, all of these universities that are making it very difficult for Jews to feel safe. In the end, those universities, as wealthy as they are, as elite as they are, they will be cursed institutions. I have absolute faith in that line, Lekh Lekha, or those who curse you will be cursed. I've seen it. The evidence of that is not only in that little parcel of land on my bike trip, but it's everywhere. If you visit Poland today, you go past, places where the land is cursed because the people cursed.
When? Ad matai.
Matai. Okay. So challenges that Abraham faces. Let's go to the second challenge, which is a really fascinating challenge. He gets into the land, he goes from place to place, he puts an altar here, he puts an altar there. I get the sense that he so wants to reach out to God. We don't get this, it doesn't tell us what he does at each of these altars. I actually wonder whether or not he makes offerings at these altars. It really doesn't tell us. It just says, Vayiven Mizbeach, Vayiven Sham Mizbeach. He builds an altar, and in other words, he establishes certain facts on the ground. And then chapter 12, verse 10, Vayira Baaretz, another disjunction. There is a famine in the land. So stop there, and then you are in real time with Abraham, and you have decisions to make. Okay, it seems what's in front of you? There is a famine in the land. You are a shepherd. Okay, your sustenance is, I guess, your sheep, or maybe not. And there's a famine in the land. So what do you do? What are the challenges for you? God has told you to be in this land, to be in this place where I will show you, and now you can't live there. So I'll read the rest of it. He goes to Egypt to dwell there, dwell permanently, dwell temporarily. Because the famine was so deep, so heavy. And then we get the next episode with his wife. We'll talk about that in a second if we have time, obviously. But what are the choices available to him? Go ahead, Barry. Tell me.
Well, the immediate choice, I think, as we discussed before recording, is that Abraham's vital concern is survival. And therefore, he must go where the food is, and that takes him down to Egypt. But I think, listening to you parse the verses, I think when Abraham goes to Egypt, it's not clear when he's coming back. And we sometimes forget that in the black and white of the Torah, there's a lot of gray where answers are not so clear for the characters that inhabit the Bible. So when Abraham goes, I don't know that he sees his way to the end. He's just going to deal with the immediate problem. And his immediate problem is food. And also, once he's in Egypt, in a strange country, to preserve his family unit as best he is able.
Right. But he is over 75 years old at this point. And I'm assuming that he has a lot of strength, that he lives till 175. He's got a good 100 years left in him, so he's not even halfway through his life at this point, but he doesn't know that. So he is taking, I guess, some risks, certainly some risks with his physical life, because he's really saying, do I wait out the famine here and possibly die, but fulfill God's word to me, or do I at least give a chance to survival with more probability of survival by going to a place where there's food, notwithstanding the fact that other kinds of eventualities may happen, including, and here we'll go into the next little part of it, which is,
Okay.
I have a beautiful wife, and who knows? But Jeremy, go ahead.
Let me just say that I tend to find the stories of the Chumash in particular, especially here in Breshit, and even through the Tanakh in general, I tend to find their symbolic power much greater than their realistic power. Like if you read a novel, you open up a novel and characters do stuff that makes no sense. It's probably not a very good contemporary novel by, whatever contemporary novelist you want to name. But the Torah is not telling a story that's after verisimilitude. Like, man, what are we doing? We've got hunger problems. We got a land of Israel that is prone to famine because it's a rain-based
Agriculture.
agriculture. The rain's got to fall. It's got to penetrate the earth. It's got to come back out of springs. And Israel is located. The land of Israel is located, and this is the story throughout the whole Tanakh. To the northeast is Mesopotamia, to the southwest is Egypt. These great river economies, river agricultures, and we are always going to be drawn, travel between them, in exile in one or the other of the places, making alliances, trying to kiss up to Egypt, or kiss up to the Babylonians, the various Mesopotamians. I think that Torah is not telling us a story so much about this guy, Abraham ben Terach, and he's got the wife, and he's got a nephew. It's telling us a story about the symbolic exemplar of the Jewish people, who will always be making, as long as we live, a shuttle between exile and homecoming, between the big empires and the small. And so I feel like the story of Lekh Lekha, in the beginning, at the very, very end of last week's Parsha in Genesis 11, Abraham's own father leaving Ur Kasdim in Iraq, going up to Haran in it's actually contemporary Turkey. It's just north of contemporary, the Syrian border. It's like effectively Syria. Making that journey from the Mesopotamian place and arriving in the promised land, but not being able to stay there and having to go to that other great country. And that's the story, and we're going to keep returning to it over and over and over again. So that's what I think is really going on here.
Well, I love the fact that we're on such opposite parts of the spectrum here, because I want so much to be. You probably do also want to be inside the story, but I want to feel or face the choices that he is facing, and because the degree of empathy that it's being demanded here of me, a reader here, is saying, well, what do you do? God just promised you that you're going to be everything. People will bless you through you, and like, you're going to die. You're going to die. And so, do you trust God, or do you haul yourself out to get your next piece of bread, to get something to eat? And what's the bargaining? What's the conversation that is going to go on between Abraham and Sarah? In this moment, do they have a partnership in their marriage? Do they have the ability to see, look, we have a mission, there's something important, or we need to survive? And
well, what's
how would
interesting,
you write that script? I mean,
to that point, what we have is a monologue, not a dialogue.
Indeed. And so
Abraham says, "You're beautiful. Tell them you're my sister, so I shall live."
So I taught this text this week, and very interesting comment was that at this point, and it's arguable if that's sustained throughout the marriage, but at this point there is a sense of partnership, because Sarai agrees here. She is, I mean, doesn't say she agrees, but she doesn't disagree. She doesn't protest.
Well, because she also has a tough choice. She does not have an alternative.
Right. So do we see that as a marriage of shared destiny and shared partnership, or a marriage of conflict? Right?
I would, I would. I'm gonna, double down on what I was saying before, and I think that this is a story about powerless. I mean, from Sarah's perspective, a story about powerlessness, which is also part of the Jewish experience in its shuttling between exile and homecoming. And okay, let me just throw an asterisk on the question of adultery and the sanctity of a marital bond. Of course, that's a big piece of Judaism. Later on in chapter 20, when the story is repeated in the Philistine king Avimelech, the Torah goes out of its way to say that God simply physically prevented Avimelech from being able to do anything untoward, which does not say this here. I think the implication is that there is sex between Sarah and Pharaoh. And that powerlessness and exploitation, I think that's what we're going for. And I don't know, Sarah didn't protest. I don't know if she had any power to protest. I was just throw in one other Bible story way down later on. I forget this is Merav or Michal, although the two of them kind of run together, that when David is now in rebellion against Shaul takes one of his daughters, who are David's wives, and gives them to another man. So it seems like, while of course adultery and some sort of sanctity of the marital relationship is supposed to be, it seems like the other Bible stories also have a precedent that powerful men do what they want, and they become somebody else's wife now. And so I feel like the story that is being told about Sarah is not that is a partnership, but that she is victimized and exploited, and she doesn't have anything to do about it.
I don't want to come in total defense of Sarah, but I want to say that what happens, I think, was unanticipated. I don't think Abraham really thought this through at all, and we have a cascade of unpredicted events, which include the fact that he himself really doesn't understand how beautiful she is. He himself doesn't understand the consequences of that in the foreign country, and he doesn't understand the power structures in that country, where people who want to curry favor with Pharaoh are going to kind of see this beautiful woman and say, maybe in order to get favor with Pharaoh, we will pass on this information. Abraham may have just simply wanted to keep the idea that that Sarah was his sister, in order to negotiate with people, in order to prolong, in order to buy some time, in order to be able to figure out strategies of survival here. That's exactly what he says. And it's not because I wanted good. It means I want to survive. We need to survive. And this is the only way that we can survive. And his plans for survival really don't include the consequence of she was that beautiful that Pharaoh himself would want her. And so from that, we have the real crisis.
Well, I think what heightens the crisis is that God does not appear where we think he should.
Yeah, okay.
So God leads Abraham to Canaan, but Abraham finds he must leave Canaan, and God doesn't enter into the conversation.
Well,
first time that God enters into the conversation is when he afflicts Pharaoh.
Yeah, there's no conversation there. It's simply Vayinagad Onai.
And which raises the question: why is God not protecting Abraham? Why is Abraham left to fend for himself?
Because he's left.
And I think that the answer is that that's almost always the case. Indeed. God is never there quite when we want God to be there. God just shows up at God's will.
So that's what it means to have faith and trust. God is not at every little interstitial moment of the story. And I think this is what makes Abraham quite extraordinary, is that even with the one or two revelations, one or two, statements he hears, he's willing to do everything. I think that's what makes Abraham great.
Right, but what we're left with at the end of his life, as we follow all the challenges, including the last one, which we'll get to next week, the Akedah, after which God will not talk to Abraham again, is this idea of whether or not God gave Abraham enough.
Yeah. So many interesting questions. We haven't even
Whether God
scratched the
set him up to succeed or set him up to fail.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. But his name will be blessed. And through
No, I mean, I do feel that there's a Gemara, which is I'll say one small comment about Jewish practice. There's a wonderful Gemara that says, v'nivachu b'cha, or v'heyeh bracha, you'll be a blessing. God says the Talmud in Tractate Brachot interprets that to mean, Isaac and Jacob are also great. It's Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, but you will be the blessing. It's Magen Abraham. The first blessing of the Amidah is going to conclude. We're going to mention all three of you, but you're the capstone blessing. And in my community, lots of conservative communities, we've added the Imahot, the matriarchs of the Amidah, and we say Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. We say, the God of the matriarchs as well. And then we tend to close off the blessing. It's in the Sim Shalom prayer books and the Lev Shalom prayer books. Baruch Hashem, Magen Abraham Ufoked Sarah. Blesses the shield of Abraham and the one who remembers Sarah. And it's fine. I like adding the imahot in the body of the bracha, but I personally close off the bracha if I'm not davening from the Amud, not leading prayers. I want the people to be able to follow along in the book. I don't really want to deviate from the book. I think that's confusing to people. But in my own private Amidah, I still just say Magen Abraham, because there's something about what Abraham has to do that is different than what all the other patriarchs and matriarchs. There's no knock against Isaac and Jacob and Sarah and Rebecca and Rachel and Leah. Also excellent patriarchs. They just are A+ patriarchs and matriarchs. But Abraham is kind of in a class by himself because of having everything he has to leave behind.
Yeah.
So what I would add to what you said, Jeremy, is that by concluding Magen Abraham, God is the protector of Abraham, is an affirmation that God did give Abraham enough.
That phrase also comes from, and we're not going to get to it because it's such a tremendously rich parsha. There's so much to say, but the strangest chapter in Genesis is the battle of the 4 kings against the 5 kings, the battle of the Mesopotamian kings who make the Canaanite kings vassals, and then the Canaanite kings rebel, and then the Mesopotamian kings come and wail on them, in the course of which they take back Lot, in the course of which they take him as a captive, they bring him to Damascus, at the course of which Abraham gathers 318 of his henchmen and goes and whomps up on the Mesopotamian kings and rescues Lot. So the fact that we're talking about captives and war and stuff like that, we could have talked about that today. There's probably something to say about that, but that's where God in the course of that story. Or is it the star blessings? I think maybe both. That there's the phrase about that God is the shield of Abraham.
All right, we have to leave it there. We've gone on, but we can see that I think the reason why we've gone on because we just simply want to dive into the world of Torah at the expense of the rest of the world. The rest of the world is so complicated, difficult, and challenging. And Torah for us, and talking about it, is a kind of island of peace within the world. It's island of peace and many questions in a world that is very difficult and challenging right now. We want to thank you for watching, and thank you for listening, and thank you for being loyal commentators and fans of our Parasha Talk. We hope that you enjoy this, and we look forward to seeing you on the next edition. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.